Warning, this video does next to nothing to advance the body of knowledge on making your own concrete. Although not completely devoid of information, you're not going to learn a hell of a lot here. Now, that's not to say that the theory isn't sound, which is why I'm currently in negotiations with my brain on version 2 of this experiment. So, sit back and enjoy, and don't say you weren't warned.
Now you're probably wondering what the fuck is going on here, so while I continue to be all smashy, we'll do a bit of a sidebar and I'll see if I can't explain it.
So I've been buying these bags of pre-mixed concrete to make things, and they're okay, except they're full of those really ugly rocks. And as you may have seen in my Rocktopus video, it can really mess up any sort of design you might have in your concrete. So I figured replacing the rock with crushed up glass might actually look really good. But that means you have to mix up your own concrete. Fine, I'm cool with that. Your standard concrete mix is Portland cement, sand, and aggregate, or gravel. And the standard ratio is 1 to 2 to 3 respectively. So pretty simple. On my way to finding this out, however, I tripped and fell into a rabbit hole. And what I find out is that if you want to make really strong concrete, you need to add something called pozzolans. Pozzolans are mostly silica-based materials that react with some of the unwanted byproducts that are formed when Portland cement is hydrated and starts to form that hard rock-like substance. It's sort of similar to densifying your concrete with sodium silicate, except that this reaction is occurring throughout the entire piece of concrete, not just at the surface. So now I'm super curious about what kind of surface finish you can get with pozzolan densified concrete. Now, unfortunately, none of the usual dirtbag suppliers carry pozzolans, which means you're going to have to buy it from the internet, which means shipping is going to cost you as much as the product itself, and you don't get it now, you get it later, and who wants that? But what's this? Pozzolans made from recycled glass? I have recycled glass. That gives me an idea. So that's what brings us around to smashing glass in a bucket. But wait, there's more. More, you say? Oh hell, I'm just getting started. So here's the thing. Cured concrete will actually react with carbon dioxide in the air, which is good because it's pulling that carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. That reaction, however, weakens the concrete, so that's bad. This process is called weathering carbonation. In the 70s, they figured out that if you carbonate concrete while it's being cured, not afterwards, you actually end up with a much stronger product than plain old air-dried concrete. But back then, pure CO2 wasn't cheap, and we really hadn't clued into the fact that we were destroying our ecosystem, partly because of all the concrete we were making. Now, however, there's quite a bit of interest in curing concrete with carbon dioxide, as you can imagine. So in this video, we're going to make our own pozzolans, and we're going to have a stab at early carbonation of concrete. After we're done, we'll see how each of these materials stands up to grinding, polishing, and general abuse. So, on with the experiment. And if you're interested in finding out more about concrete carbonation, there is a really good literature review that I'll post the abstract link below. You're going to have to lean on your kids to go get it out of the university library, though. It was also my primary source for sussing out some sort of methodology for this experiment.
Oh damn, look what I did to my mixing tray. Son of a bitch.
Once you've got the major stuff broken down, then you can transfer it to something smaller. At least this is what I think, anyway. You got a better idea, do it. And get the sledgehammer out. Looks like sledgehammer versus glass will only get you so far in this world, so we're gonna have to devise something that's gonna crush this down even further. And since I'm flying by the seat of my pants, this is what I come up with. So in yonder bucket is a piece of hardened concrete, just extra from a job, and poured it into the bucket and let it harden. So it's got a nice flat surface on it, and it fills up the bucket quite nicely. And another reappearance from this guy. So what I think we can do is put this in the drill press, lower down, throw some glass in there, and let it grind away. Okay, I've got it set right up against the glass here. Drill press is set for as low as it'll go. I'm just gonna bring it up, and then we'll lock it in place. You can see we're losing a bunch of material. Now I'm not positive if that's concrete dust or glass dust, but what can you do? Well, that's an hour. Shop filter is just going crazy with all the glass dust in the air, I guess. Okay, let's have a look at what we've got. Oh, well, yeah, it's getting there. You can tell there's like a lot of dusty material, so I think we'll just strain that out. Just got a screen over this bowl. Okay, so the nice thing about this is it really does burr up all your, or deburr all the edges on this glass, so it's nice and smooth, which is great because that's exactly what I want for the aggregate in my countertop material. So this is going to have a dual purpose, I think. Oh, that's where the gold is, right there. Oh yeah. Now, there's no doubt that some of this is actually just concrete dust, but that's fine. So it's a, wow. It's a very fine, sandy kind of material. It's finer than sand. It's difficult to feel any of the individual grains, but not so fine as like cornstarch or something like that. Flour consistency, I guess, is what you would consider it. It's very nice. So the question is it pozzolan? I'm not pozzolan about that. I made up 4 sample boxes out of melamine. These are approximately 6 by 12 by 1.5 inches. And we're going to cast 4 different samples. First one, we're just going to take a regular concrete and just let it air dry. Normally, just the way I would normally do it. This one is going to go into a CO2 bag, and we're going to air dry this with carbon dioxide as the atmosphere. Next one, we're going to do air dry with pozzolan in it. See how that works out. And the last one, not surprisingly, is we're going to CO2 dry it with pozzolan. So hopefully one of these is going to have some significant performance benefit, but we shall see. So the first thing to do here is calculate how much we need. Normally I just do it by dead reckoning, which often turns out to be, well, every time, turns out to be wrong. So I'm going to calculate it this time. If an 80-pound bag of this stuff does 0.6 cubic feet, then we should be able to calculate how much we actually need to make up. Alright, so this is how I figure it. I could be totally wrong. Let me know down below if I am. 4 boxes is 6 by 12 by 6. That's all of them stacked together. So that's what we want, which turns out to be, if you just multiply those out, is 0.25 cubic feet. Now, an 80-pound bag gives you 0.6 cubic feet. So we don't know how many pounds of concrete we need, but we want 0.25 cubic feet. Okay, so that will just, you know, solve for X there. Should give us 33 pounds in total. So X is equal to 33 pounds. Oh, hello, phone. Un momento, por favor. 33 pounds is what we're looking at. Let's just round it up to 40 pounds just to be on the safe side. Now, our ratio is going to be 1 part Portland, 2 parts sand, and 3 parts aggregate. And let me think here. Well, according to the instructions, the pozzolan should be replace the Portland at 15%. So we'll take that into consideration too. So we've got what, 6 parts there. So let's take our 40 pounds and divide it by 6. 6.6 pounds. Oh, wait. Wait. We actually want 20 pounds because we're doing 2 boxes without pozzolan and 2 with. So we're actually looking at 20 pounds. So 20 divided by 6. 3.3 pounds per part. So that means for the regular one, let's just do that one first. We're gonna have 3.3 pounds of Portland and 6.6 pounds of sand and 9.9 pounds of aggregate. So maybe we'll just start by making that, and then we'll do the 15% for the pozzolan. Well, we could just figure out what that is. 3.3 times 0.15. So we're a half a pound is going to be replaced by pozzolan. So for the pozzolan one, it's going to be, what is that? 2.8 pounds of Portland, 0.5 pounds of pozzolan, and then the same 6.6 sand, and let's go 10 aggregate. I think that makes sense. Let's start by making the regular stuff, pour that, and then we'll do the pozzolan one. So just a side note on this pozzolan, I did a little digging on the internet, and here's some people that actually make this stuff for a living and probably know what they're doing, but you can see that they pass their ground glass through a 325 mesh. It's like 40 some microns size or something like that. Anyway, it's damn small. I'm pretty sure my mixture is not that fine, but there's probably some percentage of it that is that fine. All right, I got a fish scale set up here with a bucket underneath. So I got 1.5 pounds of water, which is half a part. And that's what they say to use, is half a pound or half a part of water per mix. So we'll see how that works out here. A little trowel, mix this up. So let's just start by adding some and give it a stir. So not quite 0.5 parts, but reasonably close. Okay, I think we're good. So let's pack this into the forms and see if we made too much or too little. Here are our two non-pozzolan boxes. Geez, it seems like it's too much to me, but maybe I'm wrong. We're gonna vibrate this down, so we're actually probably gonna make a little space when that happens as well. So we might be just dead on here with the amount of concrete that we actually need. Well, pretty damn close. Actually, who would have figured, eh? The instructions on the bag were actually true. Well, I'm having a terrible time vibrating these. Couldn't do it on the table, so I'm gonna do it on the ground here. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to add the pozzolan, half a pound of pozzolan, to replace half a pound of Portland cement. I won't torture you with watching me weigh it out. You just have to trust me. Alright, here's the pozzolan stuff, and I kind of screwed up here because this is actually a little bit wetter than these ones, which, not happy about that. So here are my samples. You want to cover them in plastic to maintain the moisture content in it while it cures. I feel like a bit of a dumbass for screwing this up, but that's not unusual. What I think happened was I just assumed that the amount of water was going to be the same between these two, but the pozzolan probably doesn't, well, almost definitely doesn't absorb water like the Portland cement. So that's where the difference came in, and then when I poured in the last bit of water, it was like, oh fuck. Knew immediately I'd added it too much. Anyway, we're going to let these cure for a little while before we transfer 2 of these over to CO2 to do the final cure. I can't remember. I read somewhere how long these need to set before you do that, but I'm going to have to look that up again. I'll let you know what that is. If I'm going to carbonate my concrete, I'm going to need some sort of carbonation chamber, and I don't have anything like that. Clearly, who does? So I'm hoping this is going to work. I'm going to try and make a bag, like a sealed bag that we can put it in out of this. Fish, turtle food, whatever, container. This is actually much more difficult to cut than I thought. Okay, this is the important part of that. I've seen this trick before, but I've never actually done it. So we'll see if it works. I got a CO2 canister here, and I don't have the right fitting, but this toilet hose works fine for some reason. And we got a 1/4 inch, I don't know what they call that, 1/4 inch something or other on the bottom there. And this is what I'm figuring I'm gonna do. So I've got this brass nipple end, which is going to pass through here and get bolted on with a little, you know, rubber washer on the end. So it'll be bolted onto the lid, like yay. And then we'll attach that to there to fill it up. Got a giant ass garbage bag here. Scrunch up the end. Put it through the hole of the plastic container. Flare out the ends. And then use the lid to seal it up. That's the idea. And then so we'll have a nipple on here that we can, you know, fill the bag up. Thought I'd give it a test just with compressed air here, just to see if we're on the right track and if it's going to hold. Seems pretty good. I think this is going to work just fine. All right. So I just had my finger on the hole, like a good Dutch boy. All right, I think we're in business. Now we want the gas to flow all the way around the concrete. So I've got a couple of baking trays here, or baking cooling racks here. We'll stick the concrete on that. We should get good flow, or, you know, submersion in the CO2. So those will just go on the inside when we're ready. These have been curing for 24 hours now. Let's flip them over, remove the sides, and carefully get them out of their molds. Now this concrete is still wet. Should be quite wet. And that is good because it allows for the carbon dioxide to penetrate into the slab. It's like, acts like a, you know, a carrier for the CO2. You can see how much water is still in it. It's very dark yet. Yeah, I'm actually a little bit surprised at how set up these are. I didn't realize that it was that quick. I got the baking trays right in there. So we'll just slide them in. Let's inflate it. I think I'll call that done. There it is. Our carbonation chamber. One thing to note here is that this concrete should actually eat up some of the carbon dioxide. That's the whole, you know, benefit of this technique, is that early carbonation allows you to chew up some carbon that you use to create the concrete in the first place. So if we, you know, if people get on board with this, it's kind of a big deal. From the literature review that I've been using as a guide here, it looks like the carbonation step can last anywhere from 2 hours to, you know, up to 56 days. Not going to be doing that. But I think 2 days probably is reasonable, 48 hours. I think that would be okay for a start. The non-carbonated samples are just going to sit here for as long as I think they need. So it's actually leaking pretty bad. And there it is. It's from the cooling rack. So that's not going to work. I'm going to have to tear it apart, put the cooling racks on something a little more sturdy. Since I'm not too keen on this happening again, I added some child safety bumpers to the corners. Racks will go on top of there. We should be fine. Alright, let's see how she fares. Okay, it's been about 2 hours now, and I still have CO2 in there, but it's clearly either absorbing it or leaking it. More likely leaking more than absorbing, but I really don't know what the ratio of that would be. So, at some point it probably will get to the point where if it's a leak, there's not enough pressure in the bag to force it out, and it'll just, you know, remain stable like the front tire on my van. Otherwise, I think I'm just going to keep topping it up as we go along here. Okay, we're about 40 hours into this and I'm starting to feel like I made the wrong decision by letting it go so long. So the problem is the concrete is starting to dry out, undoubtedly, in here, and that stops the curing reaction. So this should maybe only be done for, who knows, a few hours? I don't really know, but we're gonna stop it here and we'll have a look at our situation. Well, just by looking at it, it doesn't look all that dry. How do I know that? I don't know that. But let's look the inside of the bag. There's not a lot of moisture on it. There's no moisture on the inside of the bag. So, I don't know. Hard to say. Anyway, we've cut it off here. That's fine. So it really doesn't look much different other than it's just changed color slightly as water has evaporated out of it. They're both essentially the same. Because they presumably have lost a lot of moisture, we're going to hydrate them. So actually the inside of the bag was not dry. There is a significant amount of moisture in here. So it's probably a good idea we put that back into the concrete. Now I realize this seems a little bit mental, but what we're trying to do here is put some of the water back that was lost during the carbonation process. But there's also a paper referenced in that literature review that talks about if you hydrate the concrete after carbonation, even if it hasn't been carbonated, and you put it in water for 3 days. 3 days, I tell ya. That's crazy. If you put it in water for 3 days, it'll increase in strength by 30%. More if you let it go longer. I think they did it up to 14 days or something. I won't be doing that. But I think 3 days you get the maximum bang for your buck there. So I'm gonna let it sit in water for 3 days. Now a real scientist would have put these in water too. But I'm not gonna do that because I want to know what happens if you just leave it. And so now we've got actually 2 variables going on in the bucket. And so it's a good thing I'm not a scientist. I'd get a spanking. Our 3-day gestation period is over and it's time to birth these babies. I'll just go cut the umbilical cord. These are our air-cured ones. We're gonna just unbox them and have a look. It's a nice surface, very smooth. These have been curing in their boxes for 6 days. Now have a look at the difference between those and the... Let's see, match these up together here. These are the carbon cured Pozzolan one. Pozzolan not carbon cured. CO2 cured, just straight up concrete. Now, I'm no Sherlock Holmes, but there sure seems to be some sort of difference here. I gotta say that this feels like slipperier. This has a little more texture to it. It's still smooth, but not quite as frictionless as this one. Yeah, I don't know what to say about this. I can speculate till the cows come home, but because I don't have enough controls in here, it's all just coffee shop bullshit. I'm gonna let these slabs cure for another 3 more weeks, which will bring us to 28 days of total curing time. I'm not sure what kind of disease these things have, but they should be cured by then. Well, the time is finally here. It's been 30 days and these things have been curing, and I'm so happy to be done with this. So we have them labeled as control, carbon dioxide, Pozzolan, air dried of course, CO2 dried, and Pozzolan and CO2 dried. Do we notice any differences? It was more noticeable when they were curing, but even now the color is definitely different. If you look at the ones that are not CO2 dried, which is this and this, they are a slightly different color than the ones that had CO2 treatment here and here. So I'm just going to take a hair off the top of each one of these and then have another look at them. So after just taking a skim off the top, they all look quite similar, much like hipsters. So I think the best thing to do here is just to polish them up and see which one shines the most. We've got an assortment of successively finer grit pads here, which I will work my way through for each of these, and we'll have a peek at them at the end. I'm going to go up to about 800 grit here. So that's 100 to 800 grit polished, and this is the control sample. Carbon dioxide cured, pozzolan air cured, pozzolan CO2 cured, and they all polished essentially the same. And here's the interesting thing. So this one is just pozzolan air cured, and you can see there are these darker veins running through the concrete, whereas let me get out of the sun here, whereas the pozzolan CO2 cured one is almost completely homogeneous. I can't see any like kind of defects like that in this sample, which is really encouraging. This is also the maiden voyage of my new to me wet grinder. Best fucking 80 bucks I ever spent. So between the last polishing and now, I managed to get my ass kicked by a little bit of RNA running around my system. Stupid rhinovirus. Anyway, feeling much better now, so we're gonna continue on here. Didn't really notice too much difference with between these, polishing them up to 800, so we're gonna go all the way up to 3000 and then have another look. So that's as good as it's going to get as far as polishing is concerned, so we'll just let this dry and then we'll move on to testing it. Alright, I'm going to do a scratch test. I can tell you they're tough as nails, but I'll try and prove it here. Alright, here we go. Okay, doesn't do a lot. Actually, oh my god. Doesn't do anything. So you can see the scratch there is not even a scratch. I would just call it like a little bit of that nail getting left behind. There's no discernible like, what would you call it, crack cavity or anything. It gets even harder to see on the pozzolan ones. So damn fine scratch resistance all around. Homemade concrete wax. We're gonna just polish up half of these with the wax. 3 coats I think will do it. And then we'll do stain resistance on untreated and treated. And we'll see what happens. Have a look at the difference between waxed and unwaxed concrete. It's quite dramatic. I have to say, I don't mind any of them, actually. They all look pretty good to me. Even the control one. Okay, this is the moment we've all been waiting for. We're gonna stain these up. I've split these in half. So we've got a chamber on either side of the... That setup leaked like a sieve all over the place, so time for plan B. Oh damn. Okay, so I cleaned them up, but yeah, it's not looking good for these pozzolan samples, actually. There's stainage on both sides, even with the wax. And that was like nothing. So, I don't know, my favorites might be going down the toilet there. "12 hours later." Just gonna clean these up and let them dry out and we'll have a look. Now I'm just using a little turpentine to strip off some of this wax, so we're not looking at, you know, just a wax stain. So just for the record here, we have wine, coffee, tea, and oil. And this is the control sample, mind you. You can see it did a pretty good job with the wax on it of resisting that. And with the, let's get out of the glare here a bit. With the carbon dioxide cured, it's less, right? I would say it's less. For the, not so much for the unprotected ones, but at least for the wax one. Which means that if you got the stain up early enough, you could probably prevent it from hitting the concrete. But this is, and I admit, this is a pretty tough test, right? 12 hours sitting on the counter, that's pretty tough. But, you know, it happens. Leave it on long enough, and what's going to happen is either the oil is going to dissolve through, or the acid is going to eat through, and it's going to end up inside the concrete. At which point you're left with one solution, and that is grinding it back down, and that is just, I can't even imagine having to do that once it's installed. The Pozzolan ones didn't work worth shit for nothing, right? Other than just looking kind of nice, they didn't work at all. So there's something different about the chemistry here, but yeah, whatever it is, ain't good. So it's probably on me, though. So it looks like, unfortunately, none of these are the miracle substance I was hoping for. I'm willing to have another look at the Pozzolan situation, because it's very possible that the material just wasn't fine enough. And I think there is some merit to the carbon curing of the concrete, but I think what we really need to look at are sealers. And I know there are a wide variety of them. They're damn expensive, and kind of, you know, I'm cheap, so why the hell would I want to buy that? Maybe we can make something. It seems unlikely based on the chemistry of those things, but we'll take a little deep dive into that later. So I know this seems like a bit of a waste of time, but hopefully you learned something and didn't get too upset. There is some value in knowing that this is not the thing to do. Thanks for watching. Cheers.